talking about your research as a training scientist to like other scientists, it can get really intimidating. And you can feel like these people must know like way more than you about everything, including your thing. And so it can get really scary talking about your thing. But you need to remember that you are the expert on that one little piece of the puzzle. They might be experts in the puzzle overall or in different puzzles, but they're not the expert on your piece. And so they're not going to have as much knowledge about the piece as you do. And your job is to tell them about your piece. But in order to tell them about the piece, they need to have a better appreciation of the puzzle overall. And so when you're talking to different scientists, you need to realize that although they might be an expert in the field even, or they might be an expert in a neighboring field, they're not going to be the expert on the thing that you are talking about. And so you need to basically bring everybody together, show them that bigger puzzle piece and that bigger puzzle overall, tell them like what type of puzzle are we working on here, and then dive into your thing. And it can be really like, it can seem like, I don't want to be condescending, I mean, they probably know all this already, but really, they probably don't. I know from firsthand experience that it's not like you just graduate, you get your PhD, and you know everything. It's really not like that. You have spent your PhD researching one really tiny little puzzle piece in a big picture. And so you are the expert on that puzzle piece, but you are not the expert. You might know a lot about the puzzle overall, but you're not an expert on each puzzle piece in that puzzle, and you're not an expert on like all the different puzzles that are out there. And so science is very, very vast. And so if you get like a PhD, if you study as a scientist, you have this mindset, you have this scientific mindset, you have this skill set that you can use that makes it easier for you to then learn about other fields and to be brought up to speed more quickly. But you still need to be brought up to speed if you're talking to someone who is working on a different field or on a different problem. And so when you're telling someone about your research, it's important to contextualize it. So basically, you want to introduce them to that broader picture before you dive in and tell them about your puzzle your puzzle piece. And so this includes telling them like why your puzzle piece is missing and like what is missing, and then how you're filling in the gap. And so this research field overall, you can say like, in this field, you might have seen there's been a lot of progress and blah, 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 but there's still this problem where blah, blah, blah. And so I'm researching how I'm addressing this problem by doing this, 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 and this. And so by contextualizing things, then it helps put your research into context and shows also that you know why you're doing that research. And so like in an interview, this is going to be really, really important. So say you're in a grad school interview, you're likely going to be interviewing with professors from a variety of different fields. And so it can seem like, well, they're the experts, they're these bigwig professors, they're going to know everything, and so I just need to tell them about the very specific things that only I know because I saw it under my microscope, but they can't learn it from just like looking up in a book because they must know everything that's in all the books, because that's not how it works. There's no way we could hold all that knowledge in our heads. And so part of like grad school, a big part of it is learning how to Google efficiently and effectively and think critically about the results that you bring up and then like put them all together and stuff. So really, we use Google a lot. Even Dr. Scientists. But anyway, so basically these people are not going to know everything. And so even if they learned about it a long time ago, they might have forgotten. So basically you just want to always start by bringing everybody up to speed, making sure everyone's on the same page. Now, some people have a tendency to be like, well, as you all know, or as everybody knows, and this I feel like I understand why trainees might do that. I really hate when like professors do that and things like that. It just, because then if you don't know, it makes you feel like stupid. And so I just like to start by like, just so everybody's on the same page, or so we're all clear on some of the terminology I'm going to use, or basically things like that. You can use a kind of like softer method like that in order to bring everybody together so that everybody can follow along. Because instead, if it's not condescending, instead you're helping engage them and you're helping everybody be able to follow along. And part of engaging them is by connecting your research to that bigger picture. And so when you're starting to talk about your research, you want to start by putting it into the perspective of the broader field. So this is the broader field, the state of the field at the moment. This is the current problem. This is how I'm addressing this problem. I went about it by doing this, this, and this. This is what I found. And then bring it back to the whole bigger picture. Like, what does this mean? Like, how could this apply to that bigger picture? How does this help place that puzzle piece in the bigger puzzle? And then you can talk about how it fits with other puzzle pieces and how you're interested in, you would follow up by playing around with that other puzzle piece over there. So basically, it's important to realize that the work that you're doing, it might seem like the most important thing in the world to you, but it probably only seems like the most important thing to the world to you, especially the super nitty-gritty details. And so what other people are really going to care about is how that research fits into other research, how it fits into the broader picture, how it fits into their lives, how it could benefit their lives. I know it's like, it can get really frustrating when you want to do like basic research, so fundamental research, just trying to figure out how things work. And yeah, if you could apply it then later on, this could be really, really helpful. And this is how we get things like CRISPR, like scientists studying bacterial immune systems, discover these immune systems have this cool capability where they're actually able to like alter DNA, and then whoa, well, we could use that to alter DNA. And so that basic research leads to this applicational or this translational research. And often you can't really tell what those applications will be. And so it can be kind of hard to, when you're doing basic research, to explain like why this is important. But it's important that you have some way to kind of connect your research to the bigger picture, to why people should care, not just that it's super duper cool, because it's probably just super duper cool to you. And I know this can feel really, really hard, but sometimes when I'm listening to research in other fields and I'm like, oh my God, they find this really cool. Well, thank goodness someone finds this cool, because I do not. And then I'm like, oh, people probably think that when I'm talking about my research too. So you need to make your research in a way, make it show them why it's super duper cool. And then you can kind of dig in with those details. And remember, when you're digging in with those details, not to just dive into the details like head on without giving the context that you need and without explaining some of the terminology. And so this is another thing. The terminology can vary widely from field to field, and from like even from lab to lab. We might use different gene names for the same thing, or different like protein names, or because two people found it and they named it different things and then they realized it was the same thing. So basically, you need to make sure that everybody's clear on what the terminology is that you're using, especially this could be like on graphs or something. If you're displaying a graph and you have things labeled, like you need to make sure those labels are clear. And if something's not clear, you need to walk them through it. And you need to walk them through when you're showing a graphic. You know what that graphic is. You know what that figure is. You know what the axis is. You know what it means if it's a high or a low. You've looked at these types of graphs forever, but these people might not be familiar with that type of graph, let alone that specific graph. And so I have a tendency that I forget about this, and I kind of just like, as you can see here, this goes up or whatever. And so it's really important though that you make sure that everybody, you're not just showing them your data, but you're showing them like how you interpret the data, and then what interpretation you draw from that, and what this means in the bigger picture. And so you always want to make sure that people can follow along throughout your talk. And this is not condescending, because scientists, we don't know everything. And especially even if we're familiar with your field, we're not familiar with the exact experiment you are doing in the lab. And so when you show me what you did in the lab, you need to make sure that I have everything I need in order to appreciate it. And in order to really appreciate it, you need to draw things into the bigger context of the field, of the world, of whatever. And so you really too want to show your passion. So you might think it's the most important thing in the world. Other people might not think it's the most important thing in the world, but they're going to get engaged because you are acting like it's the most important thing in the world. And your passion for it is really going to help help make it exciting for everybody. And so it's a lot more interesting to listen to people talk about their research when you can tell that they're really, really excited about their research and that they love their research. And so this can make it really engaging, as well as engaging people by bringing your picture into perspective, bringing your project into perspective. So remember, make sure everybody knows what the puzzle is that you're working on. What that puzzle piece missing is that you're working on. Why isn't the puzzle good enough already? What's missing? Then how are you going about figuring out that puzzle piece? You could go into the details of this puzzle piece. And then draw things back like, okay, so now I have this partial puzzle piece, and so you can see how it fits in, but now what I would do is I still need to find this other part of the puzzle piece, and then we could connect this all together. And then people will have this better idea of the greater puzzle overall, and maybe even how this might actually have implications for other puzzles as well. And you can only draw a puzzle analogy to so far, but basically your research is part of the bigger picture, and it might seem super duper important to you, and it might be super duper important, and it's great that you think it's super duper important and it's super duper exciting, but remember that other people need to know enough about the bigger picture in order to realize why your work is super duper exciting, and why they should be excited about it too.